Morning, everybody. Thanks for taking a few minutes to talk with us about our 2020 spring flood outlook. So, been getting a lot of questions on this topic now that we have some spring-like weather that seems like we've been seeing, even though we got a lot of winter ahead of us. But people are thinking about this, and we rely heavily on our partners when we look at spring flooding, including National Weather Service, state hydrology reports, things like that. And so yesterday, the National Weather Service released their second flood forecast for the spring season. So we had one forecast come out already, but we're getting close enough now that we're really starting to pay attention to what these forecasts are in terms of I think their accuracy goes up the closer we get to spring. So I wanted to come before you guys today and just let you know what the city team's response is and what our work has been to date in order to prepare for this. Now, we have been hard at work really since last fall already and into the winter preparing for what spring flooding could look like. In some ways, last year's floods were both a blessing and a curse in that obviously damage, costs, challenges to the city. But we learned a lot of things from that. And so it's not too far in the distant past that we can reflect on how we responded to that, how our sandbagging operations went, what happened at our EOC. And so we have that experience not too far in the distant past that we can always rely on too, which I'm really proud of how we responded last year. And I think our response this year, should we have to employ it, will be good as well. So we have a multi-agency coordination team called the MACT is the acronym that's been meeting since December on this topic. And so that team consists of obviously a lot of people from the city and different city departments, but also different community players as well. Everyone from the Red Cross to the 211 Helpline Center and others that would play a part in a disaster response like a flood situation. What I want to continue to reinforce, as will be the case this year, as was the case last year, is the reliance that the city will have on our partners at the 211 Helpline Center, which has served us very well over the last year as the tip of the spear for communications and for citizens to reach out to the city with concerns. So that will again be an important partner for us should we have significant flood fight efforts. The 211 Helpline Center this past year, they also developed a new intake form that will make it easier for people to request for services as well as a call for volunteers. So if people want to volunteer, sign up, we'll be able to do that online as well as by calling 211. So that is a little bit of an overview on just kind of our work that we've done since December. These guys are going to talk a little bit about the details of what's been coming out of those meetings, what we're expecting in terms of the weather over the next couple weeks and months. The good news is it's been a dry last few weeks. I mean, we got a little bit of a dusting last night, but this has been good weather to help kind of thaw out the ground and have a kind of a slow melt, which has been great for us to see. So with that, I'm going to ask for Todd Heitkamp. Todd's with the National Weather Service, has been a great partner with us in all these weather events we've had over the last year. Todd's going to kind of give you an outlook on what we saw with the state hydrology report and what we're seeing in terms of weather in the next month or so. So, Todd?
Thanks, Mayor. Again, name's Todd Heitkamp, meteorologist in charge for the National Weather Service office here in Sioux Falls. First off, I want to make sure everyone understands is what the mayor was saying is that we have, we're just not picking up the ball and running with it now. We have been playing this game for a long time with the city. The city has been a true partner as well as the county in helping the communities around Minnehaha County and the people that live here to stay safe and be more prepared for the possibility of more flooding. And so with that, talking about the flooding, what I'd say the best thing that anyone can do is that if you had flooding last year, if you live along the Big Sioux River and you've experienced flooding, you should be taking steps to prepare for it now. Not saying that it's going to happen, but it's better to be prepared for it now and then nothing happens. And as the mayor said, what we've been experiencing the past couple of weeks has been an ideal situation. Even though that we have still plenty of snow to our north, we're dealing with anywhere from 8 to 18 inches of snow north of I-90. Along I-90, basically nothing to a few inches of snow outside of Sioux Falls. That has changed dramatically over the past couple of days and even weeks, mainly due to the weather situation. We've had an ideal melt. We've had temperatures above freezing during the day, and that has allowed the snow to melt, but then temperature drops below freezing at night, and that slows down the melting process and allows us to evacuate a lot of that water out of the system. So that's what we're looking for and hoping for, praying for, that will continue for the next couple of weeks. But on top of that, what has really also been a blessing is the lack of precipitation or additional precipitation that what we've seen around the tri-state area. And the way the weather pattern looks like right now over the next 7 to 10 days, it looks continues to look fairly dry. And that's in our favor. And that weather pattern, even 30 to 60 days out from now, also looks to be rather dry. There's pretty good chances of below normal precipitation. And if that's what what we would like to see, have the doctor order, it'd be nice to have it delivered because that would minimize the potential for significant flooding around here. Even though right now we're still calling for pretty good chances of moderate to major flooding along the Big Sioux as well as the James River valleys. Again, really what it determines the extent of the flooding is any additional precipitation that we see from here on out. And that's why we work closely with the city of Sioux Falls and the county to ensure that we just can't sit back and say, hey, everything's looking good. We're more optimistic now than what we were, let's say, 2 weeks ago because of the weather situation that we've been experiencing and hopefully we'll experience in the future. So that's kind of a wrap up of the weather forecast of what we have been experiencing, what we expect to experience here in the next couple of weeks or a month. I'll turn it over now to Regan Smith.
Thanks, Todd. Regan Smith, Emergency Manager, City of Sioux Falls. The city is preparing. We continue to coordinate with the National Weather Service and other community partners to maintain situational awareness. We did review our 2019 flood response actions and have updated our current response plans. We conducted an inventory of resources related to flood response, things such as additional pumps have been acquired and purchased and are ready to respond if necessary. We've inventoried our sandbag and trap supplies, and they're ready to go. We also updated our flood communications plan and have done some pre-response messaging. We have also updated our sandbag operations plan. The city and the county work together to secure an indoor production site. We're working with the South Dakota Department of Corrections to pre-produce and palletize sandbags. Those sandbags will be available to protect public infrastructure, and if necessary, we'll distribute those to the general public. What can the public do? We ask people to know if their home or business is in a floodplain. They can go to www.siouxfalls.org/flood, enter their address in there, and that will determine if they are in that floodplain. They can obtain or renew their flood insurance if necessary. This needs to be done 30 days prior to the event, so time is of the essence there. Homeowners can take steps to protect their property, decluttering their drains, gutters. This would be a great weekend to do that. Check their install check valves into their drain. Ensure their sump pump's working. Consider a battery backup. Sump pumps shouldn't drain into the sanitary system. We want those to go out into the street or into the storm drainage system. Overall, I'd say why we are cautiously optimistic about the elevated potential for spring flooding. The city continues to monitor the situation. We're actively preparing to respond if necessary. With that, I'll turn it over to Jason with Minnehaha County, and then the group can take questions after Jason's done.
Jason Gearman, Minnehaha County Emergency Manager. Everybody's kind of touched on basically, the preparation part, and I'll kind of be more specific to the county. 211 is available to the county and to the other counties around here, so basically if you have that need, please use that system. It's been very valuable to us, and we do appreciate what they do. Specifically county, again, it was said if you had some flooding last year, there's a possibility you're going to have flooding this year, so you need to prepare ahead of time. Some of the issues that we had last year were all the rescues out in the county. due to driving through, obviously, water over the roads and people that refuse to leave their houses in a timely manner. And also there were some issues with livestock transportation through the flooded roads. So think about that as you're preparing. You know, the best way you can prepare is to prepare yourself. Again, some of the issues last year was the snow around the houses, and the water was going a direction that it had never went before, and it collapsed a lot of basements. Now we've had enough melting where not a lot of snow around the houses, but think about that if you're farther north of here. Get that snow away from your house in case we do get a substantial rain. Again, in the county, we met with Del Rapids, Renner, they will be prepared, but if you live in those areas, again, I just can't reiterate, just be ready. If we leave those door markers on your house again, we would prefer that you leave your house, and we'll have more instructions as it gets closer. We have a very good forecast, but it may take one huge rain event that could, pardon the pun, wash that away. So if there's any questions specific to the county, I can take them now. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to general questions.
You mentioned that you had rescues last year. Do you have the number of rescues that you guys had?
Off the top of my head, I think we did around 12, I think, something like that, between the city and the county. We did have at one case, there were 3 rescues going on at one time. And there were some issues with getting some livestock out just north of Sioux Falls and south of Renner.
And I think the forecast for Dells and Renner is like 98 or more of at least moderate flooding. So how should people, I mean, are they expecting their homes to flood in those areas?
Well, the good thing about Del Rapids is many of those homes that flood every year are unoccupied now. So we hope that that will minimize the situation we have up there. And Dells has been preparing, and you know, they deal with this, you know, every few years. There's some kind of minor flood that hits Del Rapids and Renner, but last year it was just much more severe, and it's the, you know, the highest that they've seen in a long time. And then with the March issue, which surprised us all, you know, there wasn't much to prepare for there, but they're working on a plan up there. All right. Questions for anybody else?
What a funding question. Are we okay to, in case the dam breaks, so to speak, to pay for all of this?
Good question, and it's a timely question. Tuesday night at our city council meeting, we have a second reading for allocation of some surplus funds, and we're recommending of almost $7 million in surplus that we have. We're recommending about $1.7 million of that go towards a reserve for not only hedging against potential economic downturns this year, but for events like this that may be on the radar. So financially, I feel the city's in a good position. If the council approves that, to have some dollars put aside to deal with this or other natural disaster events going forward. So I think we're in a good spot.
How, you sort of touched on it, Mayor, but how concerned are you? Where is this threat level for you? Or coronavirus is more of a concern. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't even bring that up. But
whole separate press conference.
but how worried are you about it?
Last fall and earlier in the winter, much more concerned than I am now. I'm still concerned, but I think to Todd's point, we've had some ideal freeze-thaw conditions, which have really alleviated some of the concern. But we're expecting and we're preparing to have spring flooding, so we're ready. But I think the concern level of at least me personally, that's been alleviated a little bit because of the kind of the nice weather that Mother Nature has sent us over the last couple months.
Just to give you a little historical background on this too. Just as compared to last year, going into the same time frame, we had a lot more snow on the ground last year than what we do right now. The antecedent conditions are very similar. I mean, our moisture, our ground is saturated, obviously. But the one thing that is, I can't emphasize enough, and I think Jason mentioned it, additional rainfall. We had that March rainfall last year on top of a lot of snow that was still on the ground, and that caused the problems as we headed in further into the spring. Right now, we're not expecting that to occur, but we can't let our guard down, as the mayor was saying. But compared to last year, we had a lot more snow on the ground around Sioux Falls than what we currently do right now.
I know this is about Sioux Falls, but is there some areas in South Dakota that we are more concerned about that are going to get hit harder?
Well, the James River, we just issued a flood warning for the James River. Once again, we had 5 days when we did not have a flood warning out for the James River, which is historical to say the least, and we're right back into it. So I think the James River is going to continue to experience things, but again, those areas that have experienced flooding in the past, they're very much aware of, of what to expect. Other than that, the Missouri River right now, again, it depends on how well the snow melts further to the north in the Colorado and the northern Rockies. So again, the Corps is doing their part by flushing the system out, so to speak, getting as much water south. So right now, the impacts are probably going to be fairly minimal in most areas if we continue on with the current weather conditions that we have.
Regan mentioned something about the state pen and the sandbag operation. Can you go into a little more of that, or is that going on at that location, or?
We'll be spooling that up next week. We'll have probably 10 to 12 inmates working with public works crews to again palletize what we feel is an appropriate number. So if we do have that rain event, we won't be scrambling to produce, and we can distribute those for our use and residential use.
Did we have enough sandbags last year?
We did, yeah. We've got a very good supply. The issue is when it comes when it's very cold out, and access to sand, access to that type of thing. So we will be ready.
And again, is that on the pen complex? Or?
We've got an off-site facility that we're doing that at. We're looking at to fill 20 to 25,000 sandbags.
The other thing on that, I'll say the trap bag system that we used last year, talking about the blessing and the curse of last year. A blessing being we utilized a new trap bag system which provided a temporary barrier instead of just having sandbags you have to pile. It's a bag system. You take skid steer and you fill it with sand, and it created a much quicker barrier that we could stand up in just a few hours. And so that was our first experimentation with trap bag systems. So that's another tool we have that we can utilize if we need to mobilize something real quickly. So a lot of times people think with sandbags, they think those individual tubes, but the trap bag system's a new. Fargo had been using it for a long time, so we kind of learned from them and asked them about that. They said it's been successful, so we deployed that here last year, and we'll be able to use that if we need to also.
And the trap bags were over by Tomar Park, right?
Correct, in the Rose Lot area there, yep.
Where else will the sandbags be used likely with the forecast flooding?
I mean, at this time, we think we've got the city public infrastructure pretty hardened up. Our sanitary, water, those type of things. We'll have those in place, ready to place if needed. And again, we'll distribute to the general public if needed. At this time, we don't anticipate that, but we've got our plans, distribution, and manufacture ready to go.
All right. Last thing I'll share, just kind of an aside, fun story. I was out at the jail, the state pen, 2 weeks ago. We were touring a company called Metalcraft Industries. I ran into one of the inmates who I ran into at tornado cleanup. He was helping with some of the wood waste work, and he recognized me. I recognized him because we kind of had a fun exchange out at the dump. And he talked about, hey, I'm ready to go back out and work. If there's flooding, you calling me, Mayor. I'm ready to go. So always really appreciative of the inmate labor program that we have with the Department of Corrections. It's good for the community, but it's also good for those guys up at the pen who see that as a way to give back and help their community. in a way that they normally wouldn't be able to. So those guys look forward to that work also. So. All right, thank you for being here today, and if you have any follow-up questions, you know how to reach us. So thank you.